So, from the 33 man list of the provisional England squad, who would you say so far, out of the names included, are the most unlucky to not be included in the provisional squad? And which 7 players do you expect to be cut from the final squad?
Well, I think Maddison for me, because I think that, as I've always said, that you have to look at, first of all, the way you want to play, the formation you want to play, and then look for players to fit into those positions. And I think we're going to play 3 up front, meaning 1 down the middle and 2 wide, be that Sterling and Rashford, or whoever you want to say one of the wide players, and Harry Kane up front. Then you look for somebody behind him. And for me, Maddison is the perfect number 10 to play with those 3. You have Grealish, who's very good on the ball, who can dribble. You got Mason Mount, who could be one of the one of the midfield 3. You got Phil Foden. But in terms of someone who's going to pass and create for, because you want him to be passing to create for Kane, for Rashford, or for Sterling, I think that Maddison. So for me, from the front 3, Maddison's got to be the luckiest to not be unluckiest not to be in it.
Okay. Just for us, so what formation would you play then? Would you play a 4-3-3, I imagine then?
I would play 4-3-3, but of course, once again, you have to think about whether Gareth wants to play 3 at the back. As much as they may say it's 5 at the back, play 3 at the back. So if he plays 3 at the back, that could either be a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2. And if you play a 3-4-3, where you get your width from the fullbacks, attacking wise, you then don't want to play with 2 wide men because they will just be taking up the space. Although you could play it, I suppose, like Liverpool, whereby you have Mane and Salah playing wide when you also have Andy Roberts and Trent playing wide as well. But I think he will go with a 3-4-3, depending on how confident he feels with his 2 centre backs, depending on whether Maguire is fit and Stones, or how you want to play that situation.
So, who would if it was up to you, who would the starting 11 be for the opening game against Croatia?
Well, it would be Pickford in goal, John Stones, Harry Maguire, Trent Alexander, and Ben Chilwell, or Luke Shaw, either one of them. Luke Shaw's had a fantastic season. In midfield, I would have Jordan Henderson, Declan Rice, and Mason Mount. And then up front, I would have Harry Kane, Marcus Rashford, and Raheem Sterling.
So one of the names on that list that you didn't mention was that of Jack Grealish, who I know how well he played against Belgium, and a lot of fans would probably have them in their starting 11. Do you reckon he has a way to play himself into the team over the course of over the tournament?
Well, first of all, he's hardly played any football. He's been injured for a long while, Jack Grealish. And secondly, Jack Grealish is similar to when we talk about Zaha at Crystal Palace, the boy at Newcastle, who's a real individual player, who can just get the ball and do whatever he wants, which he does at Aston Villa anyway. If you wanted to fit into a system to give him a defined role, which they all have, because Sterling and Rashford are going to stay wide, as much as they may come in, but they'll stay wide, not just go searching for the ball everywhere, which is what Jack Grealish does. And you have Harry Kane up front, where Jack Grealish for Aston Villa really just does whatever he wants. He goes and plays wherever he wants. If you wanted to fit into a system, is a clearly defined role in that system going to suit him rather than giving him a free role to run anywhere, which I don't think England can afford to do with any player. No one has a free role with England. So even Maddison, who may play as a number 10 off the striker, doesn't just do anything he wants and gets the ball off the back 4, gets the ball off the right back. So for me, and Phil Foden, similar. So the problem that we have is we've got so many number 10s. You got Foden, you got Grealish, you got so many. If Maddison played in that, interesting one with Greenwood. You could put Greenwood in one of the front 3. So they've got a multitude of options from an attacking perspective. Our problems we have are really in terms of our defensive midfield players. So Jordan Henderson hadn't been particularly fit all the time. You got Declan Rice there, and Declan Rice really is a converted centre-back playing in that position. Calvin Phillips plays there as well. So from that point of view, we'd look okay. But from an attacking perspective, it's unfortunate we've got so many good attackers, but you can only play, or so many good number 10s, creative players, you can only play one.
I just want to stick on Grealish, actually. So do you think Villa are going to struggle to keep him next season? And if not, where do you think he should go?
I don't think they'll struggle to keep him, because I think he should stay at Villa. Because as I said, we mentioned Saint Maxim, you mentioned Eden Hazard, who really is just such an individual player at Chelsea to do whatever he wants. Him going to another club with a structure, with players equally as good, if not better than him, who are superstars, whereby he can't then come and demand the ball off Fernandes at Manchester United or Pogba and say, I'm going to be the main player, then he has to play a very disciplined role. Would that be the right thing for him? So that is why, as I said, you've got to be careful in terms of, because you're that type of a player at one club, unless you're going to be a Messi or Ronaldo, whereby you can go and take over from Fernandes or Pogba, or take over from whoever else playing on another club, which I don't think Jack Grealish necessarily is. Why would he want to leave Villa feeling his career will take off? He'll earn more money, he'll get more prestige, he may even win a trophy, but I don't think that another club will do his playing career any much better.
Just want to move on to, again, some of the creative players in the England team. So Phil Foden, obviously you played with Paul Gascoigne. Do you think Phil Foden is the most gifted English player we've produced since him?
Not necessarily. I mean, you got Raheem Sterling, you got other players who are, I mean, they're different, but I mean, you know, and the thing about it is, give the boy time to develop. This is his first year. And then next year, if he doesn't do it, what we're going to say, Theo Walcott was going to be, wasn't he? We put so much pressure on these young players after they've had one good season to then say that, you know, they're like Paul Gascoigne, who had been a superstar for years and been in the England squad. So he's got the potential to be. But of course, we've had lots of players with potential in the past who never realised it. So I don't put pressure on players like Phil Foden to then say, you are the reason why we think we're going to win the Euros or the World Cup. You look at the senior players to put the pressure on them. But for Phil Foden, he's just go and enjoy it. But he certainly has a potential to be that type of a player, yeah.
I just want to move back to Paul Gascoigne. So do you have what's the funniest or most bizarre thing you've ever seen him do in your time with him as a teammate?
We haven't got enough time for the funniest and bizarre. I suppose taking his racing car onto the go-kart track when he got kicked off for crashing into people. He bought this car from Brian Robson, which was one of those cars that you make that go 150 miles an hour, and he got kicked off the track, so he brought that car on the track. That's one. Nothing that you can really mention that for the camera, but Gaza, they're just too many to mention with Gaza.
So you went to Euro 88 under Bobby Robson, but England lost all their group games at the tournament. However, 2 years later at Italia 90, England achieved a place in the semi-finals, which was the best they've done in a tournament since 1966. What changed in those 2 years? And if so, what were your fondest memories of each tournament?
Well, in many respects, the Euros are harder than the World Cup, because particularly the Euros back then. Because the Euros back then, before obviously Europe became lots of small European teams, you got all good teams, you know. So the group that we were actually in, the USSR, which were a very strong team, it's not just Russia, the whole of the USSR and Holland who were eventual winners. And the disappointing one was against Ireland. Now, if you look at that game against the Republic of Ireland, we had so many chances. And we lost 1-0. But under different circumstances, we could have won. Gary Lineker, you know, their goalkeeper, Paddy Bonner, was a man of the match. And had we won that game, you know, we possibly could have gone through. So it was just a much more difficult problem. So nothing much changed because it was the same team, the same players. And of course, then you look at the World Cup, when you can then say, looking at the games, we were quite fortunate. Cameroon should have beaten us. We were 2-0 down. They got a man sent off, and they were very naive for us to come back and beat them. Belgium, where we beat them 1-0. They were the better team on the day, and David Platt scored a worldie. So in many respects, we were fortunate to go through. But then the best game we played, where we should have won against Germany, we lost. And that happens in cup football. So I think that with England now, and England back then, like in '86 when we got to the quarterfinals, if you are one of the top 10, 20 teams in the world, you should be getting to the quarterfinals, which is what England do. We get to the quarterfinals, we get to the semi-finals, and with a bit of luck, we could go on to win it. And that's happened to England. You know, we got to the semi-finals of the Euros just now, or the World Cup, whichever one was the last one, where we lost to Croatia, the World Cup. But when we played against teams better than us, we played against Belgium in the group stage, we lost. We played against Croatia, we lost. Who we beat to get to the semi-finals of the World Cup was Sweden and Colombia. So as much as we got to the semi-finals, look at the teams we beat to get there, and should we not have got there by beating those two teams? So, therefore, it's a very difficult thing to win the World Cup and get to the final, but once you get into you should be getting to the quarterfinals, semi-finals, but once you get to the quarterfinals, semi-finals, you're playing against teams equally as good as you. Should England get to the final of the World Cup? No, they shouldn't, because we're not the top two teams in the world. But with a bit of luck, we can. But what we should do is regularly get to the quarterfinals, semi-finals, which is what we will do and which is what we've done in the past.
So I just wanted to move on. So basically, the next question I have is regarding the expectations of this current England side at Euro 2020. What would you class as a success for England? Would you say the quarterfinals, semi-finals then?
Yeah. Anything else is a bonus because that's what we've done. You know, the World Cup before, the World Cup before that, you know, because when we say we should be getting to the final, we can't say, like, it's like in the Champions League or the FA Cup, and people say we think we're going to have a good cup run. How can you think you're going to have a good cup run when you don't know who you're going to play? So Tottenham thinks they're going to have a good cup run, but you're playing in the third round Manchester City away. Chances are they're going to beat you. So to then say we think we're going to have a good cup run, we don't know. But because of the seedings and the way the groups are, we know that the top seeds will get through to the quarterfinals. Then if you get to the quarterfinals or semifinals, even the seeding means that you should get a favourable team if you're one of the top teams. But if the other group doesn't go your way, you could then play France in the quarterfinals, couldn't you? If they finish second in their group, for example. And then should you beat France, maybe they can beat us. So you shouldn't be demanding for us to get to the final or win it. But what you should say is that we know with what we have and the way the seeding is, we should be getting to at least the quarterfinals. And if we get to the semi-finals, and with a bit of luck, we can beat Belgium, we can beat France. But if everything remains equal, should we beat them? Should we beat them? They're higher than us in the rankings, they're better than us. So why do we think because we're England we should win? So England have been very consistent of late in getting to where they should get to.
So do you rate Gareth Southgate as an England manager? Because the question I wanted to follow on next was that if they didn't get to the semi-finals and repeat what they did in the World Cup, should he be given another crack going into the next World Cup in 2022, or do you think it would be time to end the cycle?
Well, first of all, once again, how can we say that when we don't know who they're going to play? Because if they get Belgium in the quarterfinals, Belgium are better than us, they're higher than us, they should beat us. So why are we going to get rid of Gareth Southgate because he didn't beat Belgium? Who would have beaten Belgium? So the whole idea of if we don't get here, then we shouldn't stick with the manager, it's crazy because we don't know who we're going to play. Now, obviously, if we lose all the 3 games against lesser teams and we don't get to where we should get to, then maybe look at that situation. But I wouldn't say that if we don't, because I don't think any other manager could necessarily make us win the World Cup with the players we actually have. So it's a question of being realistic in our expectations.
Well, just saying hypothetically, if Gareth Southgate was to leave his position after the Euros, which obviously we don't know if that would happen, who would you like to see as the next England manager? Is there anyone in particular that you think would do amazing in the role?
Pep Guardiola or Jurgen Klopp? What do you want? If you want one of the top managers, yes. But is there a manager who, Sean Dyche? I mean, Eddie Howe? I mean, the thing is... Well, of course, you know, you're looking at a good English manager, Graham Potter, and you say, can he be the England manager? But of course, what would be the respect that people would have, the press, the fans over Graham Potter, who Brighton are finishing 4th from bottom, and give him that time to develop England? Will Graham Potter do better than Gareth Southgate and make them win the World Cup? Not necessarily. And of course, when you talk about harmony and belief and togetherness, unfortunately, because of the elite situation we live in, unless it's going to be an elite manager, is he going to be given that time? Because there was no expectations from Gareth Southgate, which is fine. But the next manager now, there are going to be a lot of expectations on him if Gareth Southgate leaves the job. So this is just the nature of what it is.
So I just want to ask some Euro predictions. So there's 5 questions. First one is, how far do you honestly think we'll get at Euro 2020?
I think we get to the semi-finals. But if we don't know who we're going to play, I can't say we're going to get to the final. But even the quarterfinals, we don't know who we're going to play. So can we go past the quarterfinals? But I think that quarterfinals, semifinals is what I would expect. And then after that, it's a bonus if you can go on to the final or win it.
Who are you backing for top scorer at the competition?
I think Harry Kane could be the top scorer. Because of the way we play, he will score the goals. Now, a team like Belgium, for example, will score the goals from different areas. So I don't think necessarily Lukaku, who plays up front for them, will score more goals, although they could go further and win it. Because England are a team who really just relies on him to score the goals, if you know what I mean, which is what has happened over the years, which won't mean that we're necessarily going to win it. But I think Harry Kane obviously would have a chance. And the way Spain plays, especially they're a good team, they share the goals around as well. They don't necessarily have one main goal scorer, neither does Germany. So, yeah, but that's not important. What's important is who wins it, not who's the top scorer.
Just moving on to some of the players of the tournament. So who do you envision for best young player, and who do you expect for player of the tournament, the 2 winners of those separate awards?
I think Kevin De Bruyne will go close. I don't think that England will necessarily play in a way to have one player like Kevin De Bruyne who's going to be the superstar, because if Sterling plays well, Rashford plays well, I think we will share the way we play around as much as I think Harry Kane will score the goals. I don't think there's going to be one standout player for England who is like a Kevin De Bruyne who obviously is a superstar player. And in terms of the best young player, I mean, who knows? You can look at any of the England young players, because I don't think, you see, I think a lot of the other teams have got experienced players, good experienced players, which is probably why they've beat England in the past, because we've relied too heavily on youth. And if you look at the Phil Fodens and the Mason Greenwoods and all of these young players, they're not the ones who you need to rely on to win the tournament. You look at the experienced players. So one of the young England players, yeah, Foden maybe, but who knows? I don't know much of the other young players from anywhere else.
And just to move off England from what I mentioned earlier about former Everton manager Roberto Martinez is one of the rumoured favourites for the Tottenham role. Can you see that happening? And what would you make of it, considering his time at Everton?
I think that'd be a good move for him, and I think it'd be a good move for Tottenham. He's a good manager, regardless of his time at Everton. Look at his time at Belgium, making them the number one in the world. So he's a good manager, and if you give him the right players and the right environment, and Everton, he did okay at Everton. They didn't have the players to take Everton to where they wanted to be, but Tottenham do, in terms of improving with what they have, regardless of whether Harry Kane goes or not. It's a big club. It's a little bit like when we spoke about Brendan Rodgers going there, so it's a good job for anybody. He may want to get back into club football. He's still young. He's a young manager, and we always said that international management is for older managers after having gone through the rigmarole of every single day working on the training ground, which I know he likes. So he would definitely be a good fit for Tottenham.
And then the other name in the fold, so we asked you about Brendan Rodgers as well earlier, but the current bookies' favourite is Mauricio Pochettino. Obviously their former manager. Can you see him coming back there, or do you think he's a bit too early for him to leave PSG?
I think so. He's not been at PSG for that long. And if you look at the managerial merry-go-round, who would be available to replace him at PSG, who PSG would want at this moment in time, if you're talking about what's happening in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months. So I'd be surprised if he was to leave PSG after this short period of time. But of course, and is it wise to go back? As to whether he'd go back? I mean, he knows the place well. But so I think that I don't think that that's as much as nothing can surprise you in football. That for me is a non-starter.